A couple of quick things before we start. If any of you do happen to be on social media, please feel free to turn your phones on and help us share about the show. The Twitter handle for the show is @Nightingale1942, and the venue is at Hippodrome LDN. So I'll pop that there. Also on your tables, there are sheets that have Twitter handles for cast members who are also on Twitter. So they are all on there. Okay, so I am Terri Paddock, also on Twitter. If you want to tag me or Stage Faves, my musical theatre website and anything, then I'll be happy to retweet and to get a social buzz going, and it's very helpful for the show. So thank you. Let me introduce you, and please save your applause for the end, to everyone on stage you've just been wowed by, as I have. Okay, I try to be good with names, so tell me if I get anything wrong. Okay. Adam Langstaff.
Correct.
Matthew Bugg. Tobias Oliver. Oliver Mawdsley. Matthew Floyd Jones. And Lauren Chinery. Great, thank you. So this wonderful company, as Tobias mentioned, Matthew here has not only played how many instruments tonight?
7. Yeah, I think something like that.
7 instruments. He has also written and directed Miss Nightingale. And when we say written it, as a musical, you probably will know, it's not just about writing the script. He's written the script, all of the music, and all of the lyrics, which is an incredible feat. So I'm going to start with you, Matthew, if I may. I'll also say I'm going to get the ball rolling, and then I'm going to look very quickly for hands from you guys, so please ask questions. Matthew, just to remind us, this show has just opened here at the Hippodrome, but it has a long history before this opening here at the Hippodrome. So just remind us when you first wrote the piece, and if you can recall what your inspiration was.
It was a decade ago, the first wrote the piece, I started working the piece, and it's very much about wanting to. So I was trained as a musician and as a dancer as well, so everyone assumed that I would go and work in musical theatre. But actually, I didn't feel that the sort of musicals that are being made were the sorts of musicals that I necessarily wanted to be involved with. And that's not, and I love musicals, don't get me wrong, but in terms of that world, it didn't feel like it was my world. It didn't feel like telling the stories that I wanted to tell. And so this was very much about trying to tell a story that was very different to those conventional boy meets girl musicals where everything just is very tidy and everything finishes very neatly. And what's very interesting about this show is we started it 10 years ago, and when we tried to get producers and venues to book it, no one would take it. And the reasons that they gave were almost uniformly, well, first of all, no one wanted to see a musical where you had the central love relationship between two men, or if it was two men, they didn't want that sort of gay man, they wanted a gay man in hot pants and sequins. And this was the wrong sort of gay man. But also, the other thing that producer then you said then was they didn't want a show where the leading lady didn't end up with a man at the end, which I found deeply frustrating. I mean, it makes me very angry, and actually I don't think it's changed as much as we think it might have changed in the last 10 years. I still think it's very hard to have a notion that a woman could be happy without a man to complete her in some way.
Yes.
And in what actually happened is that we got knocked back, and bearing in mind at that stage, I already had a number of shows in the West End as a composer, so I wasn't an unknown person. But I couldn't get anyone to back it. And so we decided, perhaps foolishly, me and my husband here, that we would produce it ourselves. And that's been if we'd known what that was going to be like, I'm not sure we would have done it, because it has been a very, very hard process, but it's also been a gloriously rewarding process.
Oh, thank you, sorry. Hello, can you hear me now? Everyone else got microphones, I'm feeling left out. Okay, that's amazing. And so, since that genesis, you have toured, how many times have you toured?
5 times.
5 times you've toured. You had a great run last year at the Vaults in London. And I remember when they came to the Vaults, I thought, well, fantastic, during the Blitz, this is the perfect venue for Vaults. If you know it, it's underneath Waterloo Station, it's like an air raid shelter. And then they announced this venue this year, and I thought, oh no, they've trumped themselves. They've got the even more perfect venue. So how did it come about that you would bring the show here to the Hippodrome, and what changes were made? And then I'm going to bring the cast in to tell about their experience with the Hippodrome.
So the first few programs that came to see the show, I had actually seen the show in 2013 on our first UK tour, and really enjoyed it, and then came to see it at the Vault, and bought a member of the team from who fell in love with it and said, we want to bring it to this venue, we think it will work really well here. And we didn't take a lot of persuading, if any. I mean, we were just bowled over. I mean, we thought, what an amazing opportunity to come to this fantastic space, but also this venue that has a history of unsurpassed in terms of, Judy Andrews made her debut here aged 12, Judy Garland was a regular. I mean, everyone has appeared in this venue, so it was such a fantastic
I think what was very interesting was that one of the things that they wanted to do here was they wanted to change people's perceptions of what casinos are, and one of the things that we wanted to do was to change people's perception of what musicals are. So it seems like there was two organisations that wanted to kind of redefine how other people were seeing it.
And speaking of the history, this venue does have an incredible history. What was happening here in 1942? Do you know?
I do actually, because I'm really geeky. So I thought, I wonder what was on in 1942, and I found out it was a play called Lem Habit, which was based on a 1930s pulp, a Chicago set crime novel, and it was a musical adaptation of this book that was set in a nightclub. And featured immersive elements where the cast interacted with the audience, and it was one of those weird things. I felt like I was on Who Do You Think You Are, because there were all these parallels with what we were doing. It was really strange, and we had no idea beforehand, so it just felt even more appropriate that we were coming back with our show.
Wonderful. And one of the other big changes, indeed 4 of the changes from last year, you have 4 wonderful new cast members. So, guys, what was it that appealed to you about Miss Nightingale and being involved in the show here at the Hippodrome? Adam, you're right next to me, so I'm going to start with you.
I am, aren't I? Well, I've actually done the show twice before on tour, but I mean, when's the last time I did it? 4 years ago. So yeah, last time I did it was 4 years ago. But I always loved working with these guys, and the idea of doing it here really appealed. I mean, I actually didn't know this theatre existed. So that came as a shock.
It is a really hidden gem. They've done a wonderful refurbishment. I don't know who here is from the Hippodrome management, but well done.
Nice one.
Yeah, good stuff. Great, excellent. Okay, Oliver?
It was the script was really, really strong. The character, I thought, was a really nice, meaty character. There were a lot of interesting songs in there. It was a nice, fun act-musician show. And I worked with Matt on panto. So I knew that I liked the director, which always helps, and got along with him pretty well, and knew that he'd steer a good ship. And it's been a really lovely process.
Matthew?
They told me they'd pay me to kiss for it. Similar reasons to what Ollie said, because I was also involved in this panto that Matt wrote. I was the musical director of that panto, and in fact, Lauren was also the leading lady of that panto, so this is actually a very... we all came out, and I guess that says it all really. I mean, not to mention, the fact that the storyline, as you said, is such a powerful one and an unusual one, considering it's weird that the leading lady would have the storyline she has and it not be conventionally finished the way you'd expect, and also that the 2 men have a complicated but central and tender, loving love story. Those are all appeal. They're things that appeal from the script. But on top of that, just knowing that the people who are involved in it were going to and have put so many years into it, and it's really I think you can see the honing. You can feel it's something that has gone through so many incarnations to get to the beautiful gem it is now. I feel like that's a really appealing thing for any actor.
And Lauren, you got the great big plum title role. That had to be a part of your appeal, yes?
It's such good fun. I mean, like, I mean, the costumes the changes are nice and simple and easy. I really like that, which is fantastic. No, she's great. She's so fun. She runs out on stage and says chuffing a lot and sings about sausages and pussies, and I mean, what more could you want? But at the same time, like 1 minute is singing about sausages and the next minute is like a heartfelt moment where, you know, some really sad things have gone on. So that's a lovely juxtaposition to have in 5 minutes.
Now, speaking of your costumes, you had a little bit of an issue this evening with your glasses. Does that happen every evening?
No, it doesn't, no. And tonight, obviously, the whistle, the duck thing fell out first, and I was like, oh, there we go, just a bit of a longer note to cover up that one. And then, yeah, I mean, they were fully gone, so thank you if you're still here. They were fully, like, I don't know how that even happened, like, behind a handbag. This handbag, like, clearly just went, I've got a joke. Sit on the glasses.
I love that. It's one of the reasons we come to live theatre, isn't it? Okay, audience, are you warmed up now? Who's got some questions they want to ask? Yes.
I wanted to direct this to you. Why set it in 1942?
I'm just going to repeat the question in case people didn't hear. Why set the story in 1942 to Matthew?
It happened to be the year I was born, but you know.
He knew.
I think there's some, so this story, although it's clearly not autobiographical anywhere, how could it be? But it's very much a synthesis of my family history and Tobias family history. So I come from a long line of very strong-willed working class women who were very frustrated by the way society expects them to behave and who have fought really hard to have their voices be heard. So there's a lot of that in my background. Toby's background were, well, you still like your background. So his granny was an actress in Berlin before the Second World War, and had worked with Bertolt Brecht and various other people, had a totally different life experience to my lot. And his grandfather on his father's side was a Jewish German Jew. His granny was a Czechoslovakian Jew. On his father's side, German Jew, and was in solitary confinement held by the Nazis. So the only reason Toby's family was able to get over here was because people took him in the way that Maggie takes in George. And I think that there's something about the fact that we were only able to find each other because of what some remarkable people did in 1942, or actually it was earlier than that, it was slightly earlier than that, but in that period. I think that is the reason that is set in that period, because it's very much, this is a story of our histories coming together. It's not biographical in any way, but it's an imagined version of what could have been happening to us, I guess.
And there are some true elements to the story, although the central story is fictional. The references to what happened to the gay men in Aberystwyth, that was a real incident. So that was a very much...
and it happened in 1942, yeah. And also the other things that were really sort of current in that thing, which then surprises people, is the fact that no one really knew about what was happening to the Jews over in, particularly in Poland at that time. And that it is entirely true that the Daily Telegraph was the only newspaper that covered it, and it was on the back page of one newspaper, and that was the only newspaper that covered it. Yeah, so all of that's true.
You will have noticed that they've put so much thought into a lot of the period details in the space here, including, if you didn't get it, do get a copy of the programme, otherwise known as a ration book. And there are some great programme notes about the historical context. One of the things that I remember being surprised about was that the phrase, the enemy within, comes from that period, referring to Toby or Matt, you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I mean,
We were referring to sort of homosexual men who were perceived as vulnerable to blackmail and therefore suspicious and suspect. And it's really interesting that in the sort of 20s and early 30s, in both England and Berlin, you had a loosening of attitudes towards all sorts of different issues, so around sexuality and around gender. And then particularly with the rise of the Nazi Party in Germany, a huge crackdown on that. But then also at a time when Britain and the Allies were fighting against prejudice and fascism, actually there was a huge crackdown on same-sex activity between men because they were seen as suspicious. And I think there was this sense of, because men were being thrown together, and what was really interesting is the big concern was that it was men of different classes were being thrown together. And this is what really threatened the status quo, was that you had working class men and upper class men mixing and realizing that they were just the same. One had been dealt a better hand than the other, and this really threatened the establishment. And so there was a real crackdown on same-sex activity, particularly across the classes. And that was where the phrase "anything within." And there were a number of cases. So, for example, Ivan Novello he was prosecuted for illegal use of petrol coupons. Although actually, if you do a research, there's a lot of thought that it was to do with affairs he was having in relationships with soldiers and airmen, and this sense of trying to actually send a message to the sort of homosexual milieu that actually this was not really tolerated. We would get you one way or another.
Okay, other questions? Come on, don't be shy. Yes, sir, at the back.
Hi. I'm also a composer, although as my mum keeps reminding me, I'm not that good because I didn't write the script and I didn't write the lyrics, so I'm not as talented as you obviously, but I'm interested in the actor-musician thing and how you cast the show and regarding the orchestration. So do you have an orchestration in mind and then you find the actors who can do that? Or do you get a cast together and then find out what they can play and orchestrate from there?
Can I just summarise in case people didn't hear? So the gentleman is a composer, only writes music and is wondering how you cast an actor-musician production, and also what comes first, the casting of the actor-musicians and what they play, or the orchestrations of the songs?
For me, it's very different for different people, but for me, it's always the casting comes first, and you look for the right actors. And unfortunately, I couldn't get them, so I got this. Set up here online. It always works that way around. Is what you look for is you look for the combination of the right people to play, to the point where even the arrangements, the vocal arrangements change as well. So this time around, we've got a different combination of voices. So actually, I've rescored and transposed a lot of the songs, not just transposed them, but actually had to rewrite them because we were going outside of people's sweet ranges. So I have absolutely no qualms in rewriting for each production, because I think that's a really interesting way to work. But it is literally a case of going, well, what instruments do we have in our palette? And if we don't have them, can we learn to play them in the next 4 weeks? So there is quite a lot of, there were quite a few moments of people at the edge of their experience. Yeah, we all have our little bête noires in the show. We kind of go, this is an instrument I don't feel comfortable with. But I think what it does is including me. What it does is it creates a massive energy with the show, because I think we're so used nowadays to having the perfect kind of backing track, sort of everything auto-tuned and everything so tight and so precise. But what happens in that rare performance is that the spark goes out, the energy goes out of it. And you don't get that total immediate system that's totally live. And particularly when we're this far away from you, having that right in your face is, I think it's thrilling. Yeah.
So let's pull the company in on that. So just remind us which instruments each of you play, and which you played more than 4 weeks ago.
I play saxophone, clarinet and flute, and I sit behind the piano at one point and press the keys down. And the glockenspiel, and the hooter, and the duck call.
That's pretty good going, Matthew.
I am a pianist, that's my main one. Accordion, I play 2 songs for 2 different shows. I've learned to play, and luckily it's about 6.
But let's just say that when we started the tour, Toby never played an instrument ever in his life. And when we started back in 2014, and 2011, in 2014, I said, we need a bass in this show. I'm going to buy a bass. You're going to learn it. And then I was like, you know, there's kind of like those, you know, you see those articles on TV about tiger moms, you know, kind of like, with the, you know, those people who hothouse their children to kind of, and we see this poor man here, just every day, like doing an hour of bass practice, and he practically left him, we read more than tears, you know, with it, and me kind of forcing him to learn the bass, but actually a few years later he's playing bass on stage for the West End.
And he did it for you. This is what love looks like. And now just quickly you're going to show
piano, violin, clarinet, saxophone, bass, and that's actually. That's it. It's fine.
No, ukulele.
Ukulele.
Sell yourself short.
Always short.
Sure.
And Adam.
I play the drums.
And you play the very
How can you? I'm kind of like comedy percussion.
Yes. And my question with actor musicians, I'm always just in awe when I come to an actor music production. That you can do all of those things is incredible to me. I'm impressed enough just by performers who do musical theatre that they can sing and dance and act and you do all the rest. But what, for you as performers, which came first? Were you musicians first, or actors first, or was it all kind of muddled up together?
Well, as kids, I don't know. As kids, I feel like I went to piano lessons and kind of wanted to do drama stuff and plays and musicals. And it was all a thing. I then went more into music when I became an adult because piano just felt like the one I felt most at home with. Like I just felt very confident. Whatever, all the other ones I was like, oh, I don't know if I'm the best or whatever. But with piano, I was like, yeah, I'm good at it. Like I just had the feeling like that's good, you know. And but I feel like from the beginning, it's when you're kids. I just think if you're, I don't know if you if you're like creative, I don't know. I think you just try everything. Is that what you?
I think I really started with like sort of amateur dramatics, like in the panto near where I lived, that like my mum and my granddad were involved in as well. And then my dad's a big music person, so I learnt saxophone, and then just sort of kind of did the hand drum stuff, and yeah, the saxophone stuff alongside, but then went more musical theatre, and then sort of kind of kept the saxophone alongside, which has been kind of handy.
Yeah, it's really useful now.
No, but acting first, performing first, and music.
I'm a musician. I'm a musician.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think for me it was always sort of a balance that went like this. Yeah.
Okay, I think we've got time for one more question. Anyone have another burning thing they want to ask? Yes, there you go.
You obviously have done lots of different venues throughout the UK, which means you've had lots of different audiences. Do you have to adapt in any way? And if so, how?
So across the 10 years of doing the show in lots of different places and venues, how does the audience change?
It's a very interesting question, extremely interesting question, and it's extraordinarily different going across the country with it. The show is played. Well, it changed stuff massively. Yeah, different, not for different venues, but in different tours. And for coming here, we did a big change.
Yeah.
What's very, very interesting, I won't talk about it in too much detail because it could, I mean, there is certain kind of anecdotes which kind of encapsulate it. Going to Guildford, for example, we did the show in Guildford back in 2013, and it was, no one was laughing. People were clapping very politely in the song, but no one was laughing. And I just went, oh, this is just, they hate it. We got to the end of the first act and rapturous applause. And we went, oh, hang on, that's a bit weird. Act 2, again, no laughter, no interaction, nothing. The fourth wall was totally in place. And I'm thinking, I don't know, this is awful. Got to the end, standing ovation. And you kind of go, what's this? And it was literally a case of, this is how we behave in the theatre, we are very well behaved, and the fourth wall is in place, and we can't interact with that. But beautiful, appreciative audience. And yeah, I'm getting there. Whereas in Halifax, which we did in the same tour with the same production, there's a bit where the two boys kissed for the first time, and some woman from the audience shouted out, "Give him one from me, son!" Which I think kind of encapsulates really so much of the difference around the country. Both of which are brilliant. what has been very interesting bringing the show to London is that we did a fairly hefty rewrite during the run at the Vaults, and then we did more of a rewrite when we brought it
That's what I
before here.
wanted to ask, because the Vaults and here are totally different
Quite
things.
different.
It's a totally different audience.
Well, I think what was very interesting was that the people in London have tended to identify with Sir Frank, and it would be Sir Frank's story, and not Maggie's story. And there is always a, I mean, as he says, this is my club, and this is my show, and she said, no, it's my show. There is always a battle for whose story we're telling, and I like that about the piece. It's a battle about whose story it is. But what's very interesting is that when the show is in London, because there's an unspoken understanding of the way class works outside of London, that people totally get the fact that it's a story about a northern working class person trying to have their voice heard in a world that doesn't take them seriously. And that is something that we had to labour actually quite hard. The writing is actually less subtle to make that read in London than it can be when we're playing in the different places. But I actually think that's a rather beautiful thing to do as a writer, that actually you kind of go, there's no point us producing and directing the show if we don't then change it and adapt it. So I don't have any, I think that's a good thing to do. And it's a very organic way to work. And it's the sort of thing you can only do in live theatre, you can't do that in film. And it's kind of quite special, I think, to do that.
Another obvious special thing about this place is that you've got a casino outside. I'm wondering, have you been tempted to try your luck before?
We're actually not allowed to.
You're not allowed to?
No, we're not allowed to.
We're not allowed to.
No, we're not.
For a 50 quid chip.
We're not allowed to. We're not allowed to. Yeah.
Well, okay, then how about let's end by saying, what's the next gamble? See what I did there? What's the next gamble? So you've got the perfect venue at the Vaults, the more perfect venue here. What is the venue? That's the criterion.
I think it's like your head is a good.
You've got enough money to retire now.
Yeah. I think there's something. You know, this is my first piece I've ever written, and it's been a very interesting process because it's been very successful and people have wanted to see it. We've actually tried to stop doing it on a number of occasions. We tried in 2014 to not do it again, and then venues kept ringing us and emailing and saying, I want the show. It's lovely. It's a lovely situation to be in. But actually, we're both ready to start the next project. So actually, and I think that whilst I am adoring this production and adoring this
Time to
company,
tell Tom's story.
it's time to tell someone. I think there's something about when you have a production you're so proud of like this one, that actually you can then sort of say, actually that's it, we can close this now, and hand it over to the people.
But there are other people who are interested in doing other things with the show.
Right, but you won't produce it yourself.
No.
Well, my goodness, and that is an extra incentive for what I'm going to say next, which is that you guys are now our champions for this production, and I need you to go forth and tell everyone about it, and not just tell them how wonderful it is, but tell them this is the last time they're going to be able to see it under the team that created it. So please, go forth and tweet and put it on Facebook and Instagram and stop people in the street and pick up flyers and come back and what else? And it continues until 6th of May. 6th of May. Wonderful. And in the meantime, wait till the end and then join me in thanking Lauren and Matthew and Oliver and Tobias and Matthew and Adam.